Hello, my name is Dan Altman. I'm the founder of Red Diamond Information Services. We are a business technology solutions provider based just outside of Priceville. We serve all of Morgan, Madison, and Limestone counties, and we advise or help our clients with cybersecurity, computer support. And today's presentation is all about the left of bang or before a cybersecurity incident in your company. We'll go over some of the easiest and low-hanging fruit prevention measures that will put you ahead of the vast majority of SMBs in the United States. Now, the goal is not necessarily to have the most secure fortress in the land. Uh, Instead, we want a nice balance of security and usability so your business can continue operating without restrictions. In 1735, one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, wrote in the Pennsylvania Gazette that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, of course, he was advising Philadelphians on fire safety, but those words still ring true today. A lot of companies today, they don't understand what's really at stake and what it costs to recover from an incident. 2022 Nationwide Insurance, they reported that their claims were between $15,000 to $25,000 in just the recovery costs. On top of that, that's 58% of the businesses um, who reported filing a claim. It took them longer than a month to resume normal operations. So that's the recovery costs plus no real income for normal business operations for a whole month. And another kind of important detail that's between the lines, if you have cyber insurance and they actually paid out on it, that means you likely already have a recovery plan in place. You already had the basics of what you would do in case there was an incident, or a written information security plan. Pretty scary stuff. You might be thinking, you definitely should be doing something or don't even know where to start. A good way to look at it is, if mice are getting into your house, the first question you might ask is, where are they getting in? When it comes to cybersecurity, some of the most used avenues of attack are cloud services, email phishing, software vulnerabilities, and supply chain. Now, cloud services, that's a big broad term that everybody throws around nowadays. In a nutshell, that is the service that replaced the big loud computers that used to be in every business's closet somewhere collecting dust. That's where all of your email and data and some of your company functions like client relations management, so on and so forth, is stored. So your email phishing, people pretending like they're someone they're not, to trick you or your employees into either A, downloading something, or B, maybe changing your payment information for a vendor to them. Um, Almost every day, your computers, Mac and Windows, have to have updates to plug holes that the bad guys can reach into. Cell phones, desk phones, printers, almost everything. It's all a tiny computer. So that also goes for software like Google Chrome, Adobe Reader, anything else that might be installed on your computer. Supply chain attacks are something that's more, it's new to the mainstream, but not a new avenue. So what that is when one of your vendors or suppliers, they're compromised, but instead of attacking the vendor or supplier, they'll masquerade as them to their customers, which is you. So they'll reach out, maybe ask you to send or change bank accounts, and you end up sending a whole bunch of money for products to the bad guys instead of where it's supposed to be your clients or your customers. People are still the number one best defense for almost all of the attacks out there. Just like with your other business operations, it's important to invest in your employees' training and education. Your technology partner doesn't provide any training. KnowBe4 is a popular provider. Fish Firewall is also a company I recently discovered. They're located here in Huntsville, actually. I haven't had a chance to work with them just yet or reach out, but it is a vendor that's local. Another important aspect besides training is a written standard on how your company handles everyday operations. Things like having a double verify procurement policy before any changes to payments are made. For example, supply chain compromise or supply chain attack. A vendor calls or emails you or your team to update your card on file so they can bill you appropriately for the materials you've used. Instead of just automatically following that email and doing what they asked, you could do you could have your employees call them on their main company line, be transferred to the appropriate department and confirm the details that they're asking. Another issue I see a lot in the SMB space is what we call shadow IT. Now, this is technology or services used in a business that is not protected or managed in any way besides by the individual who signed up for it. Um, for example, a paralegal might sign up for Dropbox so they can access their work at home a little bit easier. Now, from some of the law firms that I've worked with, especially the injury laws, a lot of those matters, or I would say almost all of the matters that law firms have to deal with, they contain personally identifiable information or personal healthcare information. They could accidentally open you up to one, unnecessary risks, and two, potential lawsuits or legal issues yourself. Open communication is also important as well, so that way they can let you know if they need a certain tool and you can evaluate and roll that into your company procedures as you see fit. So in the previous slide, I said employees are one of your greatest assets, but the problem is they can also be one of your greatest weaknesses. This is where controls and technology can augment your team. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, they're all preached all of the time, but very rare are they actually enforced. We have 100 different accounts for 100 different services: Google, Microsoft, Clio, Dash, and so on and so on and so on. But we use the same password for all of them. Um, Now, when one of these services are compromised, they can use that password to log in with our email account that's also on there. For our clients, we always recommend a password manager like 1Password, which we use internally. Keeper is also a fantastic platform. They help manage your all of your different accounts. You can keep them. Each account will have a different password. Now, it's important to not necessarily put your multi-factor authentication codes in those, because I mean, if God forbid your 1Pass or Keeper was compromised, you would still have that extra layer of protection in there with the multi-factor authentication. So the least privilege principle. This is important to make sure your employees can only access what they need for their function. 9 times out of 10, it's usually safe to assume that your sales rep or legal assistant doesn't need access to the HR data and everybody's salary. Um, with that being said, separating your data is great. Um, we all know that a year later it can get messy pretty quick, especially if there's not somebody dedicated to own that process. I often see where an employee was granted access to a site or resource a year ago, moved into a different role, or even worse, they left the company. They still have the same amount of access, or their account was never disabled and passwords are still the same. So try to review your access groups and your accounts at regularly. I would say at least annually. So as we alluded to earlier, Microsoft, Apple, they release security updates that plug holes for the bad guys, that prevent bad guys from reaching in almost daily. Windows and Mac, they do a great job of forcing you to install them and being very annoying to make sure your employees do it as well. But as the old proverb says that we like to live by, is trust but verify. Um, Always make sure your technology provider, if that's somebody who's handling it for you, is one, reporting, um, two, verifying that your computers are up to date. Google Chrome, Adobe Reader, Zoom, they're also updated regularly too, sometimes multiple times a day for the exact same thing, plugging holes that bad guys can reach into. It's a little bit more of a manual process going through and making sure that everything's updated to the latest version from the software manufacturer, but it is just as important, if not more important, than your actual operating system. A business grade firewall can be a great shield in keeping the bad guys out, and also making sure that only the good guys can get into what you want and protecting your digital footprint. More often than not, I see small businesses, they use whatever the internet service provider provides them. Um, these are usually a great option for consumer level stuff, but when it comes to your business, you should keep in mind that most of those devices are built with scale and mass production in mind, not necessarily security. We recommend security focused vendors like Netgate is a fantastic one. No subscriptions or anything like that. A little bit of management on the back end, but nothing terrible. SonicWall is our preferred partner, which is who we recommend to our existing clients with on-site infrastructure. Setting those firewalls and network devices up, we always recommend you work with a professional. That way we can make sure your network is designed and divided accordingly. I could take off the oil pan of my wife's Mini Cooper after some Googling, busted knuckles, and a ton of invested hours, maybe some harsh language too. But hiring a professional is 9 times out of 10 the best path forward, especially if you don't do it for a living. Now, since COVID, remote working or working remotely has become a staple of the modern workplace. It's almost expected nowadays. Um, we have cloud technology everywhere that enables any company to do business from the beach to a boardroom. Now, just like the old, loud, heavy on site servers, the cloud still needs to be monitored and secured. It's pretty rare that out of the box Microsoft 365 or even Google Workspace is configured in your business's best interest. Um, I mean, they have to cater to the lowest denominator, so a technology provider should be able to monitor your cloud and even your on-premise infrastructure for anomalies. Now, a shameless plug for my company. We have a US-based cybersecurity team and security operations center. They monitor all of our clients' cloud, computer, and servers for regular activity. I think by now we've all read, heard, or watched some sort of training about phishing, whether it's from an employer, our bank, or social media. Um, I might be guilty of posting about it once or twice on LinkedIn and Facebook, but relatively recently, though, social engineering has been a huge attack vector for the bad guys. They can use data scraped from breaches, social media, company websites. They can shape their emails, texts, phone calls to make it sound like they are exactly who they say they are. If you don't have a process in place to verify them, they might just be able to collect some of what they want from you and deliver something equally as terrible to your company or maybe your downstream clients. Training a little bit of tech to augment your employees could be the difference between that 15,000 or 15 to 25,000 recovery cost in the case of an event. Training is great, technology is great, but having a written plan to follow if things do hit the fan, that's the superpower. Just like you practice your fire drills, tabletop exercises for cybersecurity events, and taking that training and technology and puts it to the test. Organizations like the American Land Title Association, HIPAA, CMMC, to name a few, they require or highly recommend that you have a written plan in place. I think we've already had it beaten into our heads that our computers, on-site servers, they need to be backed up. But of everything we say and recommend, telling business owners that their cloud data should also be backed up always kind of gets some cocked heads and some weird looks. It is true, unfortunately, that Microsoft, Google, even Dropbox, they do not guarantee your data at all. There's been a few cases where things magically disappear, or we've even had a few clients that didn't have their cloud backed up before they started services with us. Somebody deleted their client data, and then nobody noticed for 30 days, and poof, it's gone forever. You can't recover it. I would say that almost more important than the actual backups is testing those backups. It's absolutely critical. Your technology team should be testing them, doing test restores, and having you verify the information is there on a regular basis. This, for one, it makes darn sure that what they're backing up is actually usable in an event. Two, making sure that both you and they know what to do in case of a real disaster. And three, it'll help with a recovery plan. Things like little details, like if you have a huge amount of data or X amount of data, it might take 8 hours or 2 days, depending on your internet connection. Now, none of these suggestions would happen overnight. I guess they could if you're willing to throw enough money and resources at it, but they are very obtainable for almost any size business with the right expertise and partners. I hope this has been informative for you. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. Our contact information is in the slide here, and thank you so much for your time.